Brandon Straka, welcome. And first of all, if you don't mind, your reaction to the verdict.
Great, good. I'm glad at least that he was convicted. But, I mean, we know that the DOJ already basically tried to give him immunity and sweep the entire thing under the rug. So this was like the very least of what really should have potentially happened. It's something, but to your point, I think it's mostly theater.
Yeah, it's strange. And somehow I feel like this is aimed to help Biden, strangely enough. All right, Brandon, it's been a wild ride for you. You were unfairly persecuted and prosecuted for January 6th. You didn't even go inside the Capitol. You didn't hurt anybody. You didn't help you didn't break anything. Where are you today? What's your priority right now?
Well, where I am right now today in terms of my case is that, the government put me in jail. They gave me house arrest with an angle tracking monitor and 3 years of probation. So purely by coincidence, my probation will end 5 days after the 2025 presidential inauguration. We did file at one point for early termination of probation, which is typically granted to people who don't have a criminal record and not very serious crimes or charges, which is certainly the case with me. But in my case, the DOJ and the D.C. courts determined that I'm too much of a risk to society to be let off of probation. So I will be serving the entirety of my 3 years of federal probation.
That's by the way, what's that like? I mean, you got President Trump. You're in good company. President Trump is in. What is that like when you're on probation? What do you got to do?
Yeah, well, I will point out I'm not a convicted felon, which is their favorite phrase to use these days. In fact, I'm a convicted misdemeanant. But in terms of what I go through with probation, basically, I'm not allowed to leave the state that I live in without permission from the court, which, that's really something. I mean, most people who know me and kind of track the work that I do, I'm on the road all the time, running around the country, trying to wake people up, get people to walk away from the Democratic Party. So I can't leave my state without getting permission from the court. Of course, it requires regular check-ins with a probation officer, drug testing, you name it. So there's definitely a lot of the D.C. courts definitely have a lot of interaction with me and overseeing a lot of what goes on in my life.
BrandonStraka.com. It's Straka with an A, but you say Straka. Brandon, we bring this up from time to time. Gay Pride Month seems a little bit more subdued than last year. Have you noticed that? And what does that mean, if anything?
Let's wait and see. I'm not convinced that it's necessarily more subdued, but I will say that the trend that we keep seeing right now, clear across the board, is the weaponization of the justice system. What concerns me more than anything, what concerns me more than rainbow flags and rainbow departments and pride, are when we have people trying to put people in jail for 10 years for driving over a pride crosswalk. When we have liberals from coast to coast who are ripping down statues and desecrating monuments, and that's considered free speech, and they don't face any charges. But if you dare to make tire tracks on a pride mural that's painted on the highway, you could be potentially facing 10 years in prison. And all of this under the guise that it's a hate crime, that this is a marginalized group. I want to remind people, if you want to know who truly holds power, look to those who you cannot criticize. If you dare to criticize anything that's going on within the LGBT community, you may be slapped with a hate crime and going to jail for 10 years.
That is really something. Yeah, the people who refuse to be criticized. And we should be a country where you can say whatever you want, quite frankly. Brandon Straka, you notice that a lot of people are walking away from the Democrat Party, and a lot of them happen to be black.
Yes.
You have any thoughts on that? Have you had a role in that? And how much further is this going to go?
100%. Yeah, I think that trend it's happening. We're seeing so much of that, and we're seeing a lot of people creating videos in the black community talking about how they're walking away from the Democratic Party. And I think there's a number of reasons. For so long, the Democrats have really manipulated this community, telling them that they're, the victims of a culture of systemic oppression, that they're a marginalized community, and that the Democrats are the only people who care about them and care about their freedom of choice and their freedom of opportunity. And now you see that the Democrats are shoving illegal migrants into minority communities,